Welcome in, everyone. Today we are talking about Witness for the Prosecution. This is not the TV version. This is going to be the 1950s version with Charles Lawton, Marlena Dietrich, Tyrone Power. I'm gonna give it away right now. I love this movie. This is a great movie. I feel like this is a movie if you are not a huge fan of black and white, if there's a particular young person that is not into black and white movies. Witness for the Prosecution is a great movie to introduce someone who's kind of skeptical about whether or not they really like black and white movies. It's a great intro into that. That Stalag 17. This is one of those types of movies, really, really fun type of storytelling that I don't really think we get that much of. Hey, Fuzz Aldrin, welcome into the chat. Also, we're talking about Witness for the Prosecution today because over at the Patreon that you can join, it's $5 a month, sponsors this channel for creating more and more content, and you get extra content on the Patreon as well as a poll as to vote for what it is that we're going to be reviewing every now and then. So this won the poll on Patreon last month. So if you want to vote for what we're going to talk about next month, go ahead and join the Patreon. Link is in the description. So back to this movie. In the promotionals for Witness for the Prosecution, it copied a lot of what Psycho did in its promotions. It gave everyone a little bit of a warning, telling everyone, enjoy this picture. But remember, if you come to watch it, do not tell anybody what happens in the movie. If any of your friends have seen it, do not ask anyone what happens in the movie. It was kind of an old, gimmicky way of getting people teased as to what's going to happen in the movie. That doesn't happen now. But Psycho and Witness for the Prosecution, these were two very popular instances of that happening. So instead of really focusing in on the story of Witness for the Prosecution, I'm going to talk more about the edges of the movie because it is a story that twists along the way. And the more that you talk about what is going on with the plot, the less you actually, I think, get from the excitement of the plot itself. So to start off from, this is directed by Billy Wilder, who I would say is one of the best entertainers. If you want to talk about directors, you got lots of directors. Some are much more about style. Some are much more about historical accuracy. Some are much more focused in on the writing. Some are much more just about, camera movements or special effects or action or things like that. Billy Wilder is really just an entertainer. He did a bunch of different genres, but every genre that he went into, he would stay true to the genre while at the same time making sure that you're always going to be entertained. He did movies like a fantastic run of movies. This is in 16 years. He did Double Indemnity. He did Foreign Affair, Sunset Boulevard, Ace in the Hole, Stalag 17, Sabrina, The 7-Year Itch, Witness for the Prosecution, Some Like It Hot, and The Apartment. He did all of that in 16 years. I think I don't know if he is one of the most nominated Oscar director for director. But he's definitely up there with one of the most nominated. And that was back whenever the Oscars actually really, really meant something. So that's saying something to be nominated that many times. He was actually very against people who focused mainly on style. He was not a big fan of the methodology of people like Orson Welles. He was not a big fan of who else was, I forget, there was another person. I forget who else I was thinking of in that time, but that type of the type of filmmaking of people who focused way more on the camera translating stories. He was more interested on really the story and the writing pushing through and being as entertaining as possible. He was fantastic with actors. He brought 14 actors to getting an Oscar nomination. He totally disliked and spoke out against filmmakers that focused on politics and movies. Said it was one of the most boring things of all time. And he paired himself, in this instance, Witness for the Prosecution, with Agatha Christie, who was seen really called, one moniker for her was she was the queen of crime. She was the creator of characters like Poirot, who we're seeing now in the Murder on the Whatever series. That series was going on back in the 1900s as well. She did things like Mousetrap and Witness for the Prosecution that went on to Broadway and then later went on to be a huge Hollywood production. And her key to making movies that enticed you and stories that enticed you at every single step of the plot was an incredible setup. Her setups were fantastic. So the setup for Witness for the Prosecution is Charles Lawton, the incredible Charles Lawton, and his performance in this is gigantic. It's huge, and it's very tough because you can tell that the performance is so big that it's very easy for it to slip over into caricature. You can tell that this was something that was very much meant for the stage, but he does a very, very good job of bringing the heft to that role and walking the tightrope without actually falling off and making a joke of himself, which you can tell in lesser hands could have definitely gone that way. So he is essentially an attorney in England, and he is pretty much told after a massive heart attack that he has to take very mundane cases, nothing big, nothing that's actually going to push him all that much. And the first day that he comes back, he ends up giving that all up because he is teased with this case of this man named Leonard Vole, who is accused of murder, and it seems like he has no alibi at all. But after decades and decades of being a very high-powered attorney, he pretty much is able to see that this person is without a doubt not the person that committed the murder, and he is kind of challenged by the deck that is stacked against this man, pretty much leaping at the challenge of saying we're going to have to prove this. And the thing that makes it all the more enticing is that the only alibi that can be trusted essentially is his wife's, who's played by Marlene Dietrich, who does a great job in this movie as well. And he feels like obviously the word of the wife isn't going to mean all that much, but in the first meeting of her, and this is all essentially at the very beginning, right at the beginning of the movie, he then speaks to the wife, and she is so cold. It almost seems like in interrogating the wife, while he was interrogating the husband is essentially saying she will stick by you if it doesn't work to work with her, at least we have her in her corner. But when he meets with her, she is so cold. She is act seems like actively trying to shoot her husband down whenever it comes to what's actually going on with the story. So it's not even so you've got a level of intrigue from the main kid. Well, Leonard Vole, you essentially are kind of like, how in the world is this man who actually did it if he didn't do it? And I believe that he didn't do it. And then you've got Marlene Dietrich who then shows up, and you've got an interest here about if it's so obvious that it wasn't him, why is she so resolute to maybe throw him under the bus? All of this, I think, is what the setup in this part is so intriguing because it pretty much then, and this is where Charles Lawton's performance, it really ties it together, because in him you can see the conviction in him to pretty much say like, damn, I almost died from a heart attack. But there's so much mystery going on here. He then decides to take the case on almost to just figure out what in the world is going on with all this. I kind of want to compare the movie to Aaron Sorkin a bit, because the movie, it feels so volatile. But when looking back on it, it is essentially conversations that are going on in rooms. The conversations are filled with so much meaning. There is not a scene or a conversation or a look that does not hold an intense amount of meaning in it. And you can see also how well the movie was directed. I really want to bring Billy Wilder up because of that, because the movie definitely has, in the content, you can tell that this was from the stage, but you're not really. I could see how there'd be a lot of ways, and there have been TV movies that if you look up clips on YouTube, you can see that other productions have not been able to get rid of that play feeling. That happens a lot. Like Malcolm and Marie last year was a movie that felt a lot like you're watching a play, a theater piece. This does not have that at all. Even though it takes place in courtrooms and offices, nothing's outside, no one's doing any action. It's literally people on a set talking to each other. It's got the drama and it's filmed in such a way that keeps it from feeling like you are watching a filmed stage play. That's, again, the actors are incredible with that. And honestly, that's all I kind of want to say about the movie. It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. I've seen this movie a few times. Definitely worth going back for a rewatch. I don't think you get a bunch from doing a lot of rewatches, but I would definitely think 2 or 3 rewatches would be fun, especially just from an acting perspective, because the actors do a fantastic job. But yeah, I'll leave it just like Psycho said, just like Witness for the Prosecution said in their ads. If you watch it, don't tell anyone about it. Just recommend the movie. Give them as many like trivia details as you can. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And this one's on Amazon. I don't think it's able to stream right now a lot of other places, but it's definitely on Amazon. Fuzz Aldrin is asking, what's the most annoying character in movie history? Jar Jar Binks or the nurse from Witness to the Prosecution? I thought that she was funny, and I thought she played off very well from Charles Lawton, how incessantly she was trying to get him to do every little task that he was being given by the doctors. Near the end, I do feel like she gets a little bit annoying. She kind of pops up a little bit too much. Like it almost feels like a kid movie near the end whenever she's showing up. But I don't know if I was totally annoyed by her to the point that I called her one of the most annoying of all time. I'd have to think about that because even Jar Jar Binks, I watched Phantom Menace and all of those movies when I was a kid, and I feel like Jar Jar Binks really appeals to the younger generation. So I feel like I'm in the group that was coming up. I feel like I was in the group that was coming up wherever Jar Jar Binks actually appealed to you, so you actually don't mind him all that much. Fuzz Aldrin says that the nurse was Charles Lawton's real world wife. Wow. Well, that's a fun. I didn't know that. That kind of makes sense. I don't know if Charles Lawton was a method actor, but maybe he kind of pulled a little bit of their actual relationship into the annoyance of it. Or maybe, hey, if you're in a position where you can actually talk to your spouse like that, maybe they just had some fun with that. Well, if you're watching this, please sign on to the Patreon. I will put a poll up there in a few days to talk about a movie that we can do for next week. We'll go ahead and vote on that, and then we'll go from there. But next week is going to be Mad Max. Again, like I said on the Oscar reaction video, this Friday, we're going back to a live show. Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk really Oscar reactions, not so much the nominees, but more so what shape the Oscars are actually in. I actually came across a story recently where the Oscars actually had to give back $12 million to ABC because the valuation of the Academy Awards is actually that low right now. I feel like there's a whole conversation going on about the Oscars that isn't being had at a high level. Everyone is just kind of consumed by people that like the Oscars are consumed by the Oscars. Everyone on the outside, more and more people are being on the outside. Not that many people care about the Oscars all that much anymore. And there's like a piece in the LA Times thing mocking Spider-Man for not being in there. So we'll talk about that on Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone that subscribes. And please, please subscribe for future updates on reviews and movie news.